Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Laps Down podcast. My name is Andrea.
I'm MJ.
And we have, I got to cue her in. And we have a guest that we are super excited about this week. I have to say, you've been on the list of potential lapped traffic guests since literally we came up with Lapped Traffic. We came up with like a list of like 20 creators that we absolutely love. And you were at the top of it. Do you want to introduce yourself?
First of all, I feel so honored. I literally I love both of your guys' content, and I feel like I'm meeting like celebrities right now. Like, I feel honored to be here. So to hear that I was at like the top of your list, like
You were?
I feel so honored.
What's your username? Where can we find you?
My name's Disha. I run a TikTok and Instagram account called Disha Does F1, where I do F1 and IndyCar related content. I do race recaps, quali recaps, and then I talk a little bit about mental health in the space of motorsports.
Yeah, your username is a little bit misleading because when I came to you, you were already early to the IndyCar game. You were making IndyCar content before a lot of people had started, integrating it in a little bit. But how did you get into motorsports? Where did it all start?
So if you don't know, I am a PhD student in clinical psychology, and that program takes up a lot of my life. So when I started in 2022, my entire life was very much dedicated to my school and my career, and I was getting burnt out so fast because it's something that you spend your life working to achieve and get to, and then when you get there, it's like, okay, I've gotten like my dream goal, and now I feel like this is all I do and I don't really have a life outside of it. And I didn't really want it to define me. So my first year in grad school, I was kind of a bit lost for identity or just finding things to enjoy kind of outside of what I study and like what I do. And my friend one day like mentioned Formula One to me and talked about how much she loved Lewis Hamilton. And I was like, this sounds kind of interesting. Let me check it out. And I watched the first episode of Drive to Survive, and for some reason, I've always loved Mario Kart, and now I'm gonna sound ridiculous, okay? It's kind of a little insane, and I like genuinely love Mario Kart and watching people play Mario Kart on YouTube, as in like I watch videos of people playing Mario Kart to fall asleep. And my head didn't realize that was like a real life thing, that like Mario Kart happens in real life in it being Formula One. So my mind was like absolutely blown when I first watched Drive to Survive, because I was like, oh my God, Mario Kart is based on a real life thing.
It's based on a true story.
Literally. I was like, this is real, and I've had no idea my entire life, and I've been like religiously watching Mario Kart videos my entire life, and I had no idea. And so I immediately got like sucked into it to the point where the next time I saw my friend, she was like, oh, so like you watched Drive to Survive, like how did you like it? And I was like, oh no, girl, like I've like picked my favorite drivers, I have watched races now, like I love Williams, I love Alex Albon, and this is why I love him. And she just looked at me and was like, oh, you're like kind of insane.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's my thing. This is gonna be my thing for like the next 5 years of my life. Like I feel it. I love it. So it was quite fast, I would say.
I had no idea, MJ. I don't know if you did that was like a niche on the internet of Mario Kart videos. Like people play. I've like seen Minecraft, but never Mario Kart.
So he's like, well, I guess in the scheme of YouTube, he's like a relatively smaller creator. Like he has like 300,000 or 400,000 subscribers. His name's Troy, TWD98, if anyone knows who I'm talking about. He uploads daily videos. I'm so clocked in because I watched him to help me fall asleep.
Oh, that's so funny. Do you play Mario Kart?
Yeah.
I have a Switch. Do I play it? I mean, I'm not good at it. There was a time in my life when I was like 8 years old that like I was really freaking good. Like Mario Kart DS was my shit. And now I'm just like your normie average Mario Kart player on the Switch. I'm nothing special, but I love watching it.
Can I also be honest? I thought that there was no way to be good at Mario Kart versus other people, because I used to think I was really good at Mario Kart, and then somebody told me it's almost like just luck. Like they're like winning Mario Kart is luck. And I was like, no, I feel like I'm putting in skill. So this guy must be like top-notch best player in the world.
Oh, he's locked in. He does like shortcut challenges where there's like ways you can skip levels on like Mario Kart Wii. Like, I have a problem.
Do you still watch Mario Kart videos now, or do you like do what MJ does where she falls asleep to like old races or something?
Still Mario Kart. I feel like I've conditioned my body to kind of like, okay, if Mario Kart is on, like I can like, rest. Like now it's like I've classically conditioned myself to fall asleep to Mario Kart videos specifically. So I'm locked in if the Formula One race is on. Like, unfortunately, that's not putting me to bed. That's keeping me up.
We would love to introduce you to a stage 2 nap. I think that we could change your mind about races.
NASCAR.
A NASCAR stage 2 nap could do wonders for you. And now we know how to put you to sleep in public. Just turn on a Mario Kart video.
Mario Kart.
But how did you make that switch from F1 to IndyCar? And like, when did you make that switch? Was it that F1 wasn't enough anymore and you had to have something else to get the fix?
So I'm going to shout out another podcast. I don't know if you guys know Track Talk.
Yes.
Track Talk podcast.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. We'll allow it, just this one.
I think that was the first like motorsport podcast I ever listened to. And I don't know if it was recommended to me because I'm also a Canadian girly, but they're obviously also Canadian. So I was locked in. I was ready to support my Canadian girlies. And I think they were one of the first people I ever heard talk about IndyCar. And I was like, oh, this is so interesting because like I really like I was so new to the motorsport space. I really only understood Formula One. And I was like, whoa, more people do this? And it's in North America? Like I'm like actually pretty close to where some of these races happen and it's not ridiculously expensive. I think the accessibility like really sold me on IndyCar because it's North American based and it's so much cheaper to attend. So yeah, I'm locked in. I love IndyCar. I love what it does. I love all the drivers.
Such a funny picture to like you discovering that there's Mario Kart in real life and then you being like, oh my God, wait, there's more Mario Kart in real life?
Yeah, they're doing it just around here in my neighborhood.
Whoa.
That's sick.
I'm so obsessed with that. But kind of moving away from like how you got into motorsport, like how you got into content creation. Because you mentioned earlier that you do like race recaps and previews, but you have like a really unique way of doing it and you have such like a solid style. Like whenever I see one of your posts pop up, I'm like, oh yeah, no, this feels like home. Like I recognize it immediately. But you do more graphics versus like videos, which I think more content creators just kind of film a video and toss it up. But what drove you or what inspired you to do creation in this specific form?
So if I'm being honest, I was like, I'm going to want to yap about this all the time. And I could feel it with the people in my life. I'm like, I'm going to be so annoying if all I do is talk about motorsports with my friends. I'm like, I can't do that to them. Like, they will hate me. I will be kicked out of the friend group. I'm not doing that. Albeit I've now gotten like a bunch of my friends and my cousins and my sister all into motorsports. But still, my goal for starting content creation was really to have an outlet to talk to other people who are as obsessed with motorsports as I am, so I wouldn't have to annoy the people in my real life. And at first I wanted to start, I don't know if you've seen people do like motorsport journals, like on TikTok,
like bullet journals with like the
Yeah, so I wanted to do that at first, but then I realized I am a grad student who is pretty busy, and journaling and making things look the way I'd want it to look would take up probably too much of my time, as well as like filming and then like editing TikToks of me like making these very pretty journals. Like kudos to the people who do it. I love those videos, but I was like, I can't. Like, I'm not going to have enough time, and it's just not going to go the way that I want it to go. So I created my kind of template to resemble what I'd want my journal to look like, which is why it's kind of like scrapbooky.
Yeah.
But that was like the main inspiration. It was kind of a way for me to digitize what would have been an F1 journal and me kind of talking about races and what happened.
That's like a niche of video that I really enjoy, by the way, just for like the bullet journal people. That's what I could fall asleep to on YouTube.
They're
but yeah,
so good.
I think that makes total sense. That actually makes a lot of sense, like where your brand, like in your visual, like look kind of came from, because I totally see like the scrapbook elements. If you guys like haven't seen her content, she does such a good job of like kind of capturing the images of the race and the drivers and these big moments, but you do kind of give it almost like a rough around the edges, like you just tore it out of a newspaper and pasted it to a page. So that actually makes a lot of sense now that I see. This is why we interview content creators. I would have never guessed.
We're putting it all together.
Yeah. I think it's MJ brings up a great point of like your content is so recognizably like your own when it comes up on my feed. Like I know looking at it, it follows your brand and I know who it comes from. Have you ever considered like switching it up, or like how did you come to like this is what I'm sticking with? Because you really committed to it. Did you ever be like, I want to like throw the whole thing out and try a different one? Or are you stuck with the bullet journal thing?
I've had a couple people be like, hey, like, have you ever thought of switching up your feed? Or they'd be like, oh, this is getting kind of old now. And I'm like, at this point, I've had one person in my DMs be like, I love your posts, but this is getting kind of old. Are you thinking of switching it up? And I was like, honestly, no. I'm like, no, not at this point. I like the fact that I have a very recognizable template, and I think that works to my favor because you, like you said, you kind of look at it and you're like, oh, this is a post by me. So I like that I have a very recognizable kind of identity. And also it's just like a lot of work to try and rebrand and think of something new. And I'm happy with what I do and how my posts look. So at this point, honestly, not really. I'm not thinking of switching anything.
I think that's like kind of me and MJ talk about like when we're making videos, like obviously we want it to like seem like it came from us and it comes in our like own voice when we talk or like tell jokes. We never want it to sound like it came from somebody else and like we're just repeating a joke that somebody else had. So I totally get like, you know, you got something good and sticking with it and like making it your own brand. Now, I do think if I remember correctly, you got to do kind of a media engagement sort of thing with it. Was it the Indy 500? You got to like ask questions during like the media bullpen part of it?
So I have been writing for a smaller motorsport publication called Pit Brief. And I think I started around Imola. I started writing for them. Don't hold me to that though. It might have been a different race, but around kind of like April, May time, mainly because I wanted to kind of understand like that field and how it works because I do love writing and I did a bit of like writing on my own and I still plan to continue doing pieces for myself, but I kind of wanted to see what it was like to actually work for one of these publications. And that's been fun. I still do that. So yeah, I've gotten to attend a couple of press conferences. I covered the Detroit Grand Prix.
Okay, maybe that's what. Yeah, I remember. Yes. So like, how did you prep like kind of for like more of the journalistic side of things? Less as a content creator and more as like a journalist. How do you prep for like your media side of stuff? Like knowing what questions you want to ask drivers or like what does that process look like for you?
So I think I come at it from a very different lens because I'm someone who's in the field of mental health and I very much pitched myself on that and being like, hey, I'm kind of interested in understanding the mental health side of motorsports more here. And that's really what I wanted to write. And the editor-in-chief was like really into that and really supportive of that. So honestly, I kind of come at it from a little bit of a different angle because I combine skills that I've learned throughout my graduate program and working as a clinician with kind of, you know, like those like typical like journalism things, but I don't have a formal background in journalism at all. So it's definitely a lot of kind of like learning the ropes on my own and figuring out what to do. But I do find that some of the skills between interviewing as a clinician and interviewing as a journalist, at least in terms of the kind of questions I'm interested in, kind of overlap in a way. So it was pretty funny. I did an interview with Callum Ilott, and we were talking about things like mental strength and mental resiliency in IndyCar. And he gave a really good answer. And my brain immediately went into like therapist mode. And I was about to say, for sharing that with me. And I started and I was like, thank you. And I caught myself because I was like, oh my God, you cannot tell an IndyCar driver that you are interviewing. Thank you for sharing that with me. Like, no, we're not doing that. So I caught myself and I was like, thank you for answering my question.
Wow.
And it was
Good save.
I don't think he caught on to what I was going to say, but I was like, oh my God, like that would have been so embarrassing if I had done that.
Maybe that's what they needed to hear, you know, like
I
a
was
little
gonna
word
say.
of affirmation. Wow, she thanked me for sharing. I feel better.
But kind of speaking about, like, you are a phenomenal writer. I'm subscribed to your Substack, so I get a little email every time you post something. And you obviously lean more towards, like, talking about, like, mental health on your Substack. But I was kind of wondering, how do you navigate which specific stories you're going to talk about on your Substack? I know you had one where you talked about like negative self-talk and kind of represented like Lando's situation and how he acts in the media, which was incredibly interesting. But do you have any other stories that maybe you're working on soon, or any other like storylines that are kind of like piquing your interest that you'd like to work on just regarding mental health in the drivers?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like I kind of write my pieces in response to conversations that are currently happening. And I remember, like, initially I wasn't going to kind of combine my, like, I guess, like, my, like, school stuff with this, like, personal side hobby of mine. I kind of made it a rule. I was like, okay, we're just going to stick to Formula One and nothing else. There's, like, no reason to talk about what I do or like the mental health stuff. Like, that's not really what I'm interested in doing here because this is meant to be my outlet away from school. And then I remember, I don't remember, I think it was October last year, but Helmet Marco ended up being Helmet Marco and
Making a statement. Hate it when that
some
happens.
silly thing. And he had said something about Lando being mentally weak. And a lot of people were running with it. And then it became kind of a thing to just refer to Lando as having a mental weakness or being mentally weak. And that just didn't sit well with me because that sort of language can be really stigmatizing, especially given that he's one of the drivers who has brought mental health to the forefront in Formula One, being one of the first drivers to talk about mental health in this space at all. So it was kind of really concerning to see this narrative being spread around and this language being used kind of so carelessly. And it was in that moment that I was like, okay, like I feel like, from like, aside from my platform, but just as someone who studies clinical psychology, I shouldn't be letting that sort of narrative fly. And if I have a platform, even if it was relatively small at the time. I mean, it still is relatively small. But like, if I have a platform and I have the knowledge to speak on this, like, I kind of feel the need to speak on this because it's not right for this sort of language to be used in this stigmatizing manner. And I think it's important to acknowledge, like, I get that Lando gets a lot of hate now because he's popular and it's like the trendy thing to do. But I think it's important to acknowledge like why what he's done is so important and formative for like the Formula One space in general. So I ended up writing my initial post kind of talking about that, talking about some of the other drivers, public speaking up on mental health and kind of how Lando was one of the first people to do this and why the language that Helmut Marko used was stigmatizing and why what Lando did at that time and continues to do is so important in this space. And it ended up kind of popping off and I wasn't expecting it to. So I was like, you know what, people want to hear this perspective, like they're interested in it. So now I kind of take it as if there's something that comes up that is kind of related to that, or people are saying certain things, using certain language, I make a point to try and write about it, to try and either write from my perspective as a clinical psychology student and talk about the research on why certain things happen the way they do and whatnot, or just, like educate people about some of these psychology concepts that they might not know about because we don't often talk about them in Formula One. So that's kind of how I choose what to write about. I'm thinking I have been looking more into um, like concussions in Formula One and how Formula One handles that. And there was like a really interesting story that came out last year. I don't know if you guys read about Max Verstappen because he suffered from a concussion at Silverstone 2021, and he kept racing after that. But he talks about how his vision has never been the same since then, and it was like, what's the balance, right? Like,
yeah.
Was he really clear to continue racing? We have this obligation to the team, to the sport, because if Max had missed out on a race, obviously, like, he wouldn't have been a world championship winner that year. So it's a really hard balance when it comes to talking about how sports handle incidents and crashes and recovery, especially in such a fast-paced sport, and kind of where the line is drawn there. So I'm looking into that a little bit more. I'm hoping to do more of a deep dive into that and some of the research. But yeah, usually I just write about any sort of hot topics that come up.
I mean, it would be interesting as somebody who doesn't know a lot about the topic to kind of know like what they are testing for in these concussion tests in motorsports and how they maybe like compare to other sports, because I know that they do run tests, but like, are they purposely setting the criteria to like an easier to obtain like pass level because they do know people like Max Verstappen are going to be like, if I miss a race, I'm losing the championship. It's something that I don't know a lot about, but like maybe in your research, I mean, because like in football and stuff, it's like they've learned you can't really mess around with concussions. In the long term, it opens up a lot of problems.
Yeah, so I actually, like through my schooling, I actually had the opportunity to work with varsity athletes this past year doing concussion assessments and evaluations. That's kind of how that little interest sort of peaked, specifically in motorsports and Formula One, because these drivers take hits upwards of like 50 Gs, 60 Gs, like crazy hits, and they're just able to get in the car the next day. And I understand that maybe some of it is related to the fact that they are training their necks a lot more than some other sports. So like experiencing whiplash, like they might be a little better at resisting that because they train their necks so much. But still, it's hard to believe when you hear these drivers taking these like enormous hits and crashes and they're just able to get into the car next day. And it's like, I'm seeing athletes like a week out and they're taking like not as heavy of hits. And I'm not clearing them to play like a week later. It's just it's something that I'm so curious to learn more about what the FIA's process is and what that looks like and how it probably differs from what I did working with, like football players, hockey players, soccer players, because it is fundamentally so different because it is a motorsport.
Yeah. Regulating body and everything is like, maybe they set the criteria to be a little bit more advantageous to an athlete who doesn't want to sit out for a week. I will say your Substack stuff about like mental toughness and stuff, I never obviously was like, helmet's right. That if I'm ever doing that, check on me. I might have a concussion. But I will say like I did fall victim sometimes to the chatter about like what an F1 champion mindset looks like. And sometimes like, the talk about like, that's what makes Max or Oscars so great is because they're so like, they shut out the noise and they don't talk with like emotion or like they show more whatever the heck we consider mental toughness to be. But your Substack pieces, I think really like challenged that in my way of thinking. And I really appreciated it because maybe I would have sounded like an idiot on the internet talking about it. But I also kind of was struck by, like, you were talking about pressure that these drivers have to face. And I was like, F1 is set up to be bad for their mental health. That's they intend it to be. That's how you see who the real, talent is. what do you think could be different in the way that like F1 approaches like things like pressure on these athletes, or like how could the sport evolve in the future to be less about breaking somebody mentally to decide whether or not they should be a driver in F1? Does that make sense?
Oh, that's a tough question because I feel like that's kind of a question related to every elite sport there is out
Yeah.
there. Like whether you look at like the NFL, the NBA, like it's all the same everywhere. There's an enormous amount of pressure on these athletes. And I think because we have this like standard notion of what we expect an athlete to look like and behave and whatnot, it makes it hard for those drivers who want to be a little bit more vocal or who might, you know, like struggle with anxiety a little bit more or with like that pressure to perform and stuff like that. It makes it so much harder for them to speak out because we do have this tendency to criticize that and to view that as someone being like not as tough as someone else.
Right.
And I think that's just a symptom of, you know, kind of this like toxic masculinity we see in a lot of spaces in elite sport. And so I think people who are able to speak up about it and be open about, hey, like, I'm not always like cool, calm, collected. Like, even with Oscar and Silverstone, like, we just got an example. Like, our cool, calm, collected boy was not cool, calm, collected at that race.
Right.
So it happens to everyone. Like, it's not just certain people, and it doesn't mean someone is weaker than someone else. Like, it is normal, and we should accept that people have emotions, and it's okay to express that in a healthy manner.
And I'm curious, like, oh, go ahead, MJ.
Well, no, you go ahead.
I was just like also like wondering like how you think like you talked a little bit about how some of them have sports psychologists. I don't know if that's like the right term for like what, you know, like some of the drivers have talked about like introducing that into their routine of like almost a training sort of thing. Like how popular is that sort of thing in other sports, or is that something that we're going to see grow in popularity in motorsports?
It's pretty popular. I think most high performing athletes see some form of performance coach or sports psychologist to help kind of work on like the mindset and the pressure of performing. I will say like a sports psychologist operates in a little bit of a different way than someone like me, like pursuing clinical psychology would, because we tend to take more of a holistic approach, whereas like performance coaches, sports psychologists are very much focused on that specific domain. So it's a little bit different than what I personally do, but I think it's fairly common from my knowledge. But yeah, I think it's definitely like becoming more popular and kind of more accepted to talk about, I think is the big thing. Where before like people didn't want to talk about it. Like I remember reading an interview with Nico Rosberg, and he was saying like, oh, in 2016 I was seeing a sports psychologist, but I didn't tell anyone at the time. And so now it's much more normalized to talk about that side of the sport and to talk about, you know, working with other people to work on the mental side of things.
Just to kind of selfishly pick your brain a little bit, because like obviously it's a general, or it's a wider conversation to be had just with like elite athletes in general, but you focus more on the conversations in F1. I kind of wonder what your opinion would be or your thoughts are on maybe some of these. Could IndyCar benefit from having these same conversations? It's not as widespread of a sport, so obviously when you have a more widespread sport, the conversations are going to be a lot louder and a lot more diverse. But we haven't really had any of these like mental health stigma conversations in IndyCar over like at least the past couple years I've been here. Have you seen a need for that, or any situations where you're like, maybe we could approach this in a more
better
educated mind versus yelling at them or whatever?
For sure. I think that's something that I was looking to kind of pick the drivers' brains about when I was in Detroit. And I got the chance to talk to a couple of the drivers about that. And it was really interesting to hear their perspective. Like Joseph Newgarden in particular, I got to chat with him. I think it was only like 3 minutes, but like he was so interested in not only what I had to say, but in his responses. Like he was very like thoughtful in terms of like, talking about the mental side of the sport and like what it takes to come back and recover when we do have incidents. And he's someone who has had quite a few incidents, unfortunately, this season. So it was really fun to pick his brain, and he seemed open to talking about it, which I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit worried going in. I'm like, oh, are they gonna be like, oh, like what is she talking about? Like, I don't really care about this. Like, I just want to talk about like the race. But no, they were all pretty open to talking about it, and that was pretty cool to see and like sit down and get their perspective.
Yeah, I mean, Joseph Newgarden right now actually has been like having so much conversation around like his responses to like media and stuff like that after these incidents. Like a lot of people are surprised by his shift in demeanor because he used to always just be the guy that would like pop out of the medical center. And even if it was like such a bad day for him, he like was able to put on that like Captain America, I'm Joseph Newgarden, everything's perfectly fine facade. And maybe this year we're seeing like he doesn't want to do that. He just got out of the medical center, doesn't feel like talking to y'all. And so many people are struck by like this sudden demeanor change, even though that's probably the most normal human reaction to have after you just unexpectedly got taken out the lead of the race by a crash.
For sure. And that's where I find like the balance between, like someone's public persona versus, what they share with the world. What they share with the world more publicly versus, what they decide to keep more private to themselves. I find that really fascinating and interesting. And like, I specifically like through school, like I study like how people use technology, and I'm really interested in understanding like, like technology as this kind of new social world that we're sort of learning the rules to right now, and learning how to navigate that because it's different than how we interact and how we share information when we are in person. So I do think it's interesting to see kind of the shift in people deciding to become a little bit more private as they spend more time kind of in these industries. And that's because like privacy is really something where you're not gonna get criticism for it. So I don't know. I think that's kind of to be expected as people spend more and more years. Like they just want to kind of protect what their own thing is.
That's why you see all the rookies have to do media duty, huh?
Yeah, but they love it at first. It truly does seem like they're a fan.
They get kicked out in front of the cameras. Sorry, I've already done my time. Okay. Can we pick your brain also about your thoughts on this season? We've just reached the halfway point in the F1 season. We're seemingly kind of feeling like we're nearing the end of the IndyCar season. What have been your thoughts this season? What are you hoping to see for the rest of the season for both of them?
Oh my gosh, this season has been, I don't know what I was expecting, but I don't think a McLaren head-to-head for the World Drivers' Championship was really on my mind until it started happening.
Sure.
And as an Oscar Piastri fan, I've been living because I truly was not expecting him to challenge for a title in his third year in the sport. Like, I think that in and of itself tells you what a talent that kid is. Like, incredible that he's able to do that. And he's leading, the first Australian to lead since his manager, Mark Webber. Like, let's go.
So we talked about a little bit this in our last episode. Do you want a championship battle or do you want Oscar to run away with it?
That's hard because as an Oscar fan, I would love for it to be case closed because then I wouldn't be so like I'm so anxious on race day because I'm like, oh my God, like what's gonna happen? Is Oscar gonna lose his lead? Is he gonna extend his lead? Like I've never been so stressed out. I tend to like pick my favorite drivers and whatnot based on who I perceive to be more of like an underdog. And that's kind of how things tend to work for me. Like my mind goes, okay, someone like Charles Leclerc, someone like Lewis Hamilton, someone like Lando Norris, they have a lot of fans. Like silly old me isn't going to be that important to like I'm not going to add much to their fandom. Really, I'm not. So I think that's why I got sold on. So my three favorite drivers are Carlos Sainz, Oscar Piastri, and Alex Albon. So I'm an Oscar and Williams
Perfect.
girl. I know.
That's why we get
amazing.
along so well. Me and her are like the
Exactly.
president. We're the presidents of the car fandom. Okay, we clock in every week, and we're like, Carlos and Oscar, what are you guys up to? And Alex gets grouped in.
He does. We love Alex. I don't know if you're an Alex Albon hater. I'm sorry. Like, that's such a big red flag.
Bizarre.
Yeah.
Absolutely bizarre behavior. I don't understand you, and I don't want to be friends with you.
No, you're an extremely odd individual, and I don't think we should chat. I don't really know who are Alex Albon haters. Where are they? I don't want them to present themselves in our comment section, but I am curious, like, who on earth, what did you have seen from him to hate? I just like, I'm like, what is the content you're hating based on?
I feel like us Alex Albon fans were in the trenches last year when everyone was like, oh my God, like, he's not even that good.
Yeah,
like,
the wild
Carlos
conversations.
is gonna show him up. And I was like, and then as a Carlos fan, I'm like, I don't know how to feel about this, because obviously I want Carlos to do good, but I don't want Alex to do bad. And now we're in this weird situation where I'm so happy that Alex Albon got to shut the haters up, and he's just been doing so phenomenal this year. It's great. But Carlos has been having the worst luck.
He's
like,
washed.
Apparently he's washed. Apparently he's washed, and it's not just awful luck and people crashing into him, and Charles like basically crashing into him twice in Silverstone.
Williams activities.
It do be like that sometimes. So yeah, as a Carlos girly, it's been a little rough this season, but I know like Carlos tends to be like more of a slow to like warm up driver. Like he takes like he says he takes like 10 to 15 races, and I'm like, in my experience, buddy, you take like a season, and then next season I'm expecting good things. So I'm just here for the ride this season, and next season I'm gonna be really like on his ass and expecting him to put in some really great performances with that Mercedes power unit.
And we're going to be on James Vowles' ass because he promised us 2026.
2026.
You know, you bring up an interesting point as like an Alex Carlos fan. I wonder your take. So I came into this just as a Carlos fan. I've started to really, really love Alex, though. And something that makes me upset is the media, when they talk to Alex, they always ask him, like, what did you learn from Carlos? Or like, how has Carlos saved Williams? And I always think it's interesting because I'm like, this man has been clocked in at this team for quite some time. Can we not assume that some of the progress came from him as well? I mean, he's kind of whooping Carlos's butt at the moment with love. But I don't know. I just think it's interesting. People always act like Carlos is the savior for Williams. But I'm like, I don't know. I think Alex he's been the savior all along. I think Alex Albon was here for Williams before Carlos was. Alex
Albon has been clocked in since 2022. Like we will not put disrespect on his name. But Carlos has brought in a lot of money to that team. Like getting the Santander sponsorship, absolutely insane work from him. But yeah, it's a little
He's Williams and Alex's sugar daddy. He came in, he brought the cash. Now we're starting to see the results. So IndyCar.
The performance will come soon.
Yes. All right, James Vowles, keep it up. That's what he says every time they interview him. 2026, that's our year, I promise. What's the dealio with IndyCar? Who are we rooting for? I don't think I've ever really been able to figure out who your faves are in IndyCar. I've always obviously known your F1 faves.
I'm a bit of a mixed bag. I feel like I don't have a solid team or favorite. I really like Andretti. I like Arrow McLaren, although I like Arrow McLaren. I will make that abundantly clear. I like Arrow McLaren. However, I have the teeniest, tiniest, itty bitty little grudge for that time they dropped Teo Purcher like 2 weeks before he was supposed to go to Portland. And that
he was so excited too.
I know. So
I'm just gonna cry.
I was a little crazy person, and I remember they released like a helmet competition for Teo Purcher to design his Portland like GP helmet. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited for this. Like I want to design a helmet for Teo Purcher. I love Teo Purcher. And then one day I go to like find the ad again, and the ad is gone. And I'm like, what's going on here? So I'm like I don't know what I expected, but I knew something was up. And then like 2 days later, they announced that they dropped him and replaced him. And I was like, I knew this was going to happen because I knew they removed his helmet design competition. And then I think like a week or 2 weeks later, they turned it into a helmet competition for Nolan Siegel. And I was like, the disrespect, but also like I entered it. So I can't even be like that much of a hater.
I would have loved if
Also-
like they like had picked the winner before that, and Nolan Siegel's out there with like an "I love Teo Boucher" helmet, just super specific to not
Funny
him.
To me, I was like, wow, you've stolen his competition. The competition meant for Teo Boucher. I'm entering it, but like, oh, that sucks.
It's about the principle. Oh my gosh, devastating.
Did you ever hear back? Did you win the competition?
Did not make the final three, unfortunately.
What are your thoughts as a Canadian having the Montreal F1 race on the same weekend as the Indy 500? Speak up and speak out. What do you think as a Canadian? How unfair do you think it is?
I think it's absolutely unfair. And I do genuinely believe it's F1, which is, I also, like, I think it's F1's try and, like, kick the Canadian GP off to maybe replace it with another American race, unfortunately.
That's what MJ said.
But then I'm also confused because they extended the contract for Canada. So I'm like, make up your mind. Like, you're going to be losing viewers if you keep hosting the Canadian GP at the same day as the Indy 500. Like, it's not this really makes no sense at all. So I don't know.
They tried to say, I think, that it won't always be on the same weekend. And it's something, it's like
every 5
what
years.
Is it, a fucking leap year or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
But like, MJ agrees that she thought it was to try to sabotage the Canadian GP. I thought it was to try to like steal American viewers away from the Indy 500 and hope that they're more interested in F1, so they want to watch Montreal versus the Indy 500 to make sure that they don't fall in love with the sport.
The great spectacle racing, Montreal.
Yeah, they didn't want to be spectacleized by the Indy 500, so they were like, don't even watch it. Watch this instead.
Yeah, it's so confusing. I'm like, the Indy 500 is like, it's one of the biggest motorsport events of the year. You can't even try to compete with that. Like, people who do not watch motorsports watch the Indy 500 and attend the Indy 500. So I don't understand this move from like a logistics standpoint at all.
I'm glad we settled this. I feel good that we got a Canadian perspective on this, MJ, because when we talked about it, it was just two Americans yapping, and we didn't have an important perspective here, which was the Canadian one.
I was so confused when they first announced it. Like, I think my jaw dropped because I was like, why? Like, this just seems like a lose-lose situation for F1. Like, Montreal is a great track. It has great racing.
Me too.
Yeah, and I'm like, why would you want to lose viewers?
Yeah, I'll have to catch it on F1 TV next year after I'm already watched the Indy 500, hopefully in attendance. Before, I was going to skip to our last thing, MJ, but I didn't know if you had anything before our closing question. No?
Nope.
Okay. So we do a little thing here where we allow you, we open the floor for you to tell us what's next, tell us what the goal is, and to just like manifest for you whatever you hope comes next in your content creation journey. I think our stats on how successful this is looking a little bit more rough. I'm going to be honest. I think Christian Rasmussen with the Indy 500 win kind of skewed it a little bit. He did do well, though.
He didn't say what year, also. So that
is
one's
true.
Still pending.
If he ever wins the Indy 500, we get to claim ownership of that. But shoot for the moon. Maybe your manifestation will land somewhere amongst the stars. What's the goal for you? What's the big thing that you hope to achieve in your content creation?
Ooh, that's a good question. I've thought about this because I'm like, what truly is the goal of like what I'm doing, and like, what is it that I really want to do? And I would love to be able to sit down with an F1 driver and just have a conversation about mental health and F1 and like get their perspective on it. Like, I would love to just have a conversation with Lando Norris, as if that's a realistic thing to do. But we can manifest, we can dream, right? I just think it'd be so interesting to hear from him, especially having gone through like this year and it being like such a pivotal year for McLaren and for him and for Oscar. I don't know. I'd love to hear like about what he's doing to kind of protect his mental health, like how he's been managing it. And yeah, I think that'd be really interesting.
I would live for like a post-championship battle, whether he comes out the winner or not, like a tell-all interview with you. I'm picturing like armchairs, I'm picturing like good studio lighting, and we're doing like a full tell-all about his like journey in his championship year.
Tuning into that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would
well,
love
okay.
that. I don't know how I would fund that, but I would love that.
That's not part of the manifestation.
If you're listening,
that's not... They have plenty of cash, right? Like
they'll be fine.
How many sponsors do they have on that car? Like, please be serious.
Oh my gosh.
And also, money's not part of manifestation rules. You know what I mean? Like we allow people to say whatevs. Money, not an option. Well, thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you for being part of our, inner oval, we like to say, of content creators. I know that I personally appreciate your content a lot, especially when I was getting into the sport. I learned a lot from your posts, and you made me sound smart a lot of times in conversations about what's to come up in a race. You know what I mean? I'm like, I read this on Instagram. But thank you so much, and we really appreciate you coming by. What do you want to say, MJ?
I rely heavily on your content, so keep doing what you're doing, please.
Any parting thoughts, and also, make sure you tell people where they can find you one more time.
No, just thanks for having me. This has been so fun. I love just getting to like yap with other people in the space who like are in the know about what not only what's happening in the sport, but just what's kind of happening in like the creatorverse. I sometimes feel like a little bit of a lurker because I don't do like face content. So I'm like, I feel like I know all these people, but I don't know if they know me and like what my vibe is. So this has been fun. Like I love this. I love yapping.
I'm glad we got to reveal you the international woman of mystery here on the pod today. Yes. If you guys were wondering the face behind the infographics, we really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.